Welcome to our online training video for how to be president. Before you watch this video, there's a few other videos that would be useful, including our Role of the Executive Board video, which all officers should watch, and then our SMART Goals video to help make sure that you understand how to set stellar goals for your club or organization. Now, as a result of watching this workshop, here's what we're hoping you'll get out of it. You should be able to clearly articulate the role of the president and the responsibilities of being president. You'll be able to reference all sorts of policies pertaining to student orgs, including UCR policies, student life policies, and even state, federal, and local policies. You'll also have a chance to reflect on the structure of your organization and how officers should be working with each other. Lastly, we're going to equip you with ways that you can communicate with your officers, members, and even your advisor so that you can help navigate any problems that might come up. We're going to start very basic, with benefits that can apply to your student organization. You as president should know how to tap into these resources. Firstly, you have your dedicated student life advisor. This is your main point of contact when you need help. We can help with little things, such as reminders about dates or referring you to the right resources, but we can also help with more difficult situations, including rewriting your constitution, impeaching officers, rebuilding or rebranding your organization, and other larger projects. You can also work with your advisor to request workshops that either your exec board or your entire organization can benefit from, such as the True Colors Leadership Assessment or a workshop on how to table and recruit. Just let us know and we can figure out how to make this happen. Every group, by default, has a profile on Highlander Link so you can market and recruit to students that way. You also have access to banner paper and markers here in Student Life to help create materials for tabling. Another perk of being a registered org is that you have access to free reservable spaces, either spaces in the hub or any academic classroom across campus. We have an entire video dedicated to how to reserve if you've never done this. Every organization also has access to checking out tables and chairs from the hub information desk on the first floor near the elevators. You get one table and 2 chairs per org. You also get the ability to table during summer at Highlander orientation for both traditional first-year students and incoming transfer students. In terms of funding, each organization also has access to money from ASUCR to last you the whole year, as well as event-specific money from both ASUCR and ASPB for things like paying for one-time events like culture shows or guest speakers. There's also graphic designers available to student orgs, so if you don't have someone design savvy, you can stop into Student Life and we can direct you to where they work. Lastly, Student Life also hosts your official student org mailbox, where you can have mail sent to, so it's not going to your personal mailbox. Now, it's important to know benefits, but it's also important for you to understand requirements. These are the things that, if they fall through, could jeopardize your student org's existence. The first big requirement is that every year you must have a check-in meeting with your advisor to discuss things like how your group is doing, big events you have planned, and to help you manage whatever sorts of struggles or challenges your group is going through. While only one is required, many groups might choose to meet more often with their advisor, which is great. The second requirement is in spring quarter to re-register your organization on Highlander Link for the following year. Your new primary officer should do this, so they can update the information with the new exec board. And our last requirement takes place right before school starts during week 0, and that is our annual Student Organization Leadership Seminars, which is a day-long training that you need to send at least one representative to. If you complete all these requirements, your group will remain active and in good standing. Now let's reflect. Is the president responsible for completing the requirements alone? Sometimes, yes. Maybe it's a small group, and you're just trying to keep the club together. But should other officers be a part of this? Yes. When you attend your check-in meeting, you can bring others, so maybe bring your treasurer, who might have some funding questions. When you attend the seminars, maybe your vice president wants to attend. There's definite benefits to having more than one person involved in getting these things done. This is a great segue into what the role of the president is. The main job of the president is moving the club forward, spending most of their time and energy on accomplishing goals that the group has set. They should be delegating to their officers when they can and focusing on the big picture. In terms of how they're selected, a chapter president should be an elected position. You can decide if other positions are appointed, but it's typical to have elections for at least the highest positions. The president tends to be an upperclassman who has a few years' experience with the org in other positions. The exception to this might be brand new clubs or clubs that are struggling, so the only person interested or willing to run the group might be a first or a second year. The president typically serves for 1 year, but maybe longer in some of these other unique cases. Now let's start looking at policies that a group is responsible for, which means that the president is responsible for. Once a year, the president signs a form called a policy compliance form, so you should know what you've agreed to. Every club has to be open to any interested student. The only exception is our single-gender fraternities and sororities. Every club is also held accountable to our anti-hazing policies. Your job at the top is to welcome and embrace new members to your org, so be on the lookout for toxic traditions or activities that cause a power imbalance. It might come from good intentions, but hazing is very real and something we take very seriously. As an organization, there's only one way you can include UCR in your name, at the end of your name, and as a location, Chess Club at UCR. This is to make sure it's clear that you exist here, but the university doesn't control your org and doesn't necessarily condone or endorse what your group is up to. We also want to make sure that your group is fiscally accountable. So if you have any sort of money coming in, you need to have a bank account and a dedicated treasurer. We have another one of these workshops for the treasurer position, so make sure they either watch the video or they attend in person. As a president, you're also responsible for understanding your constitution and what's in it. It includes your purpose, how to remove officers, and other important things like any fees or dues that you're enforcing. You need to follow these procedures, or it may invalidate what your club is doing. Elections have been reversed because they were done incorrectly. Groups have had to pay back dues because those dues weren't outlined in the Constitution. If you want to change something, you're going to propose an amendment, and then you're going to follow that process to enact the amendment found in your Constitution. Typically, amendments are voted on by the entire membership, so the exec board can't make sweeping changes or initiate fees without the membership's approval. Now we're going to cover a few areas that a president might not be directly responsible for but should understand. Firstly, room reservations. Your Highlander Link roster includes 2 reservers. These are the 2 people able to log in and reserve rooms. It may include your president, it may not. It's up to you. These 2 people can reserve spaces and rooms which are typically free, but there are a few things which may rack up fines, including multimedia and technology or asking for the room to be set up a certain way. If you don't pay these fees, your club won't be able to re-register when spring rolls around, so you'll want to understand any charges that might apply and have a plan to pay for those charges. There are also spaces that might not be listed here, including some spaces in the Student Rec Center, spaces controlled by housing, which can be reserved through conference services, and then the University Theater in Olmsted. These spaces likely charge to reserve, so be careful. Also be on the lookout for additional steps that you might have to take. For example, if you're selling or giving away food, there might be a few requirements from our Environmental Health and Safety Department. This includes selling food in our blue tents, which you can find information about in another one of our tutorial videos. Some events may also require insurance, which your student life advisor can help you secure. This is typically if you're doing moderate or high-risk events that you might need protection for. If your event is on campus, this insurance is typically paid for by the Office of the President. If your event is off campus, your group may need to pay for it on your own, so work that into your fundraising goals for the year. Lastly, some of your events may have a guest speaker or lecturer. If they're associated with UCR, there's no additional steps. But if they're not, they'll likely need to complete a form indicating that anything they say isn't necessarily endorsed by the university. Hub scheduling will provide these forms for you when you have to complete them. Now let's talk about funding and the president's role in that. To access traditional ASUCR funding, you need to activate the account and update signatories every year, so you can start this process in the summer. Remember that while ASUCR provides free funding, it's typically a reimbursement system, so people in your org may need to pay for things up front and then get paid back, which might put some of your officers in a tough financial situation. So have a frank and honest discussion with them about everyone's ability to pay for things up front. A lot of groups are also opening off-campus bank accounts, which your student life advisor can help you with. This account is where all of your dues and fundraising money can go, and it comes with a debit card, so you can now pay for things directly with club money. When you want to change or add signatories to this account, you'll often need to request a letter from your student life advisor that outlines the new names. So contact your advisor for help in getting that letter. We also want to touch on the idea of being a nonprofit organization. Many clubs throw this term around and it's not actually true. While yes, most clubs don't make a profit, that doesn't make you an actual nonprofit organization. To become an actual 501c3 organization, it requires a hefty application fee, regular renewals, and often requires filing taxes. If you're part of a larger national or international organization, they might have a nonprofit status that you can benefit from. You can ask them about that. Otherwise, don't use that term or allude to that status, especially when accepting donations or sponsorships. These businesses might be quite upset when they realize their donation isn't actually tax deductible. We can't really offer any sort of tax advice, but plenty of tax consultants would be willing to help you navigate this. The best thing to remember about funding is that it's best to have multiple people involved. This creates a checks and balances for your funding as opposed to one officer knowing everything. Your records, both incoming and outgoing, should be transparent. A general member should be able to inquire about the results of a fundraiser, or what their dues went towards. You also want to take advantage of your mailbox here in Student Life so that any important documents are being sent here. This also helps with transition once the treasurer maybe graduates. I know this goes without saying, but consider the consequences of embezzlement. Using your org account to pay for your Netflix can be a criminal offense, as well as student conduct consequences as well. And lastly, make sure to update signatories when people leave, so that you're no longer tied to an org's bank account once you leave the organization. There's also one thing about posting flyers that presidents should really know, and that's that we have a pretty strict policy for posting up flyers. They need to be approved by Student Life and they need to be 8.5 by 11 max. That's normal paper size. You can only post these on the approved bulletin boards. Same with large banners. Those can only go in select places as well, typically really only the bell tower. If you post in areas not approved, they'll likely be torn down, and the facilities crew in that area of campus may actually want conduct consequences for you breaking this policy. We try to send warnings before this happens, so take those warnings seriously. Now that's all logistical stuff, things you need to know, and what your role as a president is. But there are also many things you'll need to do that are a little less cut and dry. You're responsible for your entire executive board and the entire club, so you'll be interacting with a lot of different people. You're probably going to be the one running meetings, and it's up to you to keep these meetings on track. Be prepared for these meetings. Bring everything you might need and maybe try to schedule them all in the same room for consistency. Be inviting at these meetings. Allow members to contribute to the conversation and ask questions. There might be conflicts, but sometimes conflict might lead to a new solution or a better way to do something. So be careful not to squash new ideas. Be impartial, especially if you have friends on your board. You might not realize that you have a bias or that you're playing favorites, so sometimes step back to see how you're being perceived. Be composed and keep your cool, and always end your meetings with the tangible next steps, the action plan to get your goals accomplished. On the screen, you see a typical agenda for a meeting. Your organization may not need all these sections, but this is just an idea to go off. You may not think you need an agenda, but it can actually be incredibly useful to help keep you and your organization on track. There are also going to be situations that arise in your organization that you feel unprepared for. So we're going to do a few examples and talk about the possible outcomes. Here's situation number 1. One of your officers has missed over half of the club meetings, including executive board. When confronted, the officer states that they've been struggling with balancing school, work, and organizational responsibilities. However, the officer wants to keep their position in the organization because it will look great on their resume. Other e-board members want to impeach the officer. There's a lot happening here, and it's surprisingly common to have officers not doing their jobs. You always want to go back to the Constitution and look at the job responsibilities for each position. If they're not meeting those expectations, they're jeopardizing your entire organization. However, how do the officers know their responsibilities? Maybe it wasn't made clear to them, so consider proactive ways of covering the job responsibilities. Some groups even have a contract that the officers will sign. So that way, when they aren't doing the job, you can look back at that and say, look, you and I both discussed these expectations and now you're making me move on to the impeachment phase. It shouldn't become personal, but rather that their actions or inaction have triggered these consequences. If you worry about it becoming personal, your student life advisor can help you initiate an impeachment vote if need be. Don't ever remove an officer without doing a vote. That's very taboo and against your constitution. Case study number 2. The STEM conference is the science club's largest fundraiser each year. This past year, the events chair failed to send out invites for the conference. The chair proclaimed that they had 50 other things on their to-do list and completely forgot to send invites, resulting in the org losing $500. The chair apologized for their actions and would like to be the chair again for this year. What are the issues here? Again, don't remove the events chair preemptively without due process. Also, don't allow them to continue this behavior. So what do? If this is an elected position, the answer is easy. Have a vote, and hopefully a well-educated membership will see the failings of last year and make a smart choice. If they still vote this person in, consider our advice from the last case study about making expectations known and holding the officer to them. If they can't do everything, consider having a STEM conference committee so that they can delegate some of those responsibilities. Case study number 3. A new member shares during a meeting that they have an idea on how to increase membership retention, but the secretary shuts down their idea. The new member storms out of the room and does not return to any more meetings. Okay, this is a different type of problem. The secretary has overstepped their bounds, so you need to follow up with them about shutting down ideas and their role in general meetings. You also want to follow up with this new member. Maybe their idea was good, or at least they were trying to help. Also look at the tone of meetings that allowed this to happen. Maybe your brainstorming needs more structure, or you need to set clear expectations first. Your job is to do something, though. Doing nothing will allow this to continue and shows your other new members what might happen if they share ideas. So you might be silencing an entire group of people. Case study number 4. You have an officer who attends meetings, but constantly shows up late. The officer also turns in their reports after the due date, but nonetheless submits them. Oftentimes, the officer has a poor attitude. Other officers have complained about this officer and want to impeach them. This should be easy now, right? You can't allow this behavior to continue, so you either remove them through due process, or you start holding them accountable to dates and deadlines. Make sure they know the expectations and that they actually meet those expectations. Case study number 5. Elections take place every spring quarter for your organization, but this year, the organization has dealt with a lot of internal turmoil, and you as president decides to skip out on elections and appoint officers. A few members expressed to you that they believe the appointments were not done fairly, and demands for a reappointment. We know that sometimes a president might make a hasty decision. You decided to just appoint officers and now it's backfired. Your student life advisor can help things get back on track. We can even step in and clear everything up by resorting to an actual election process. If members are upset and you stick with your decision, you risk losing a whole lot of folks. So it's easier to go back and do things the legit way, especially if that's what is outlined in your Constitution. Do things the right way, even if it takes a little bit longer. Okay, our last case study, number 6. Your optional advisor expressed concerns with you and the treasurer regarding the financial management of the organization. The advisor believes that you are all spending money on frivolous items and suggests that the org creates a budget for the year. You both disagree with the advisor and stop sending them invites to the meetings. The advisor then notifies you that they're resigning from their role as advisor. In this situation, the advisor is a volunteer, a staff or faculty member at UCR that has chosen to help you. This is not your dedicated student life advisor. Now, you don't ever need to do anything that your optional advisor says. They're there for wisdom and advice. But that said, it sounds like the wisdom and advice they're trying to give you might be coming from the right place. If they think you're misusing funds, maybe it is time to revisit your budget and check what you're spending money on. Cutting your advisor out isn't necessarily the right move, at least in this case. If your advisor was trying to force change and make decisions for the club, yes, it'd be a smart move to remove them as your optional advisor. In this case, you might want to listen and discuss where the advice is coming from. it might be the right move. Now, in closing, there are some other high-level things that a president can lead the charge on, including getting your organization recognized. In student life, we have Org of the Month and yearly awards that we give out. It's usually the president who submits these nominations. You can also help by referring your other officers to watch these dedicated videos, or attend the in-person workshops that we offer, or even ask them to come in and meet with your advisor here in student life. Maybe your marketing chair wants to meet about how to use social media more effectively. Anyone is welcome to set up a meeting. Don't hesitate to contact us with questions, and hopefully you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.